Good morning, Like You Follow Christian Church, and welcome to Sunday School. We are going to start a new chapter today. It's Matthew 23, and I'm going to give you a preview of what's going on in class today, and hope that if you listen to this, maybe you'll come up to class. Maybe not today, but maybe one of these days you'll wake up and say, I'm going to go to class today. Okay, we've got a great lesson today. This is not the kind of lesson that you would expect, really, at the end of Christ's ministry, where, maybe you're thinking, well, he's going to go out and he's going to talk to them about what salvation is, and he's going to talk to them about the fact that he's the Messiah. But what he does in this particular chapter, as we start here, is he is going to criticize the religious leaders of the day, and he's going to put it in a heavy, deep, dark criticism so that they really get it, that he is not happy with them. This is one of the reasons why Jesus came and walked the earth, because God's word had gotten so far away from what his intention was, and now it's in the hands of people who are treating it like they're the king of religion, and it's about them and about the fact that they don't believe that the Messiah has come, and they are following all of the thousands of laws that the Jews have enacted, and they've written them out themselves. They didn't come from Moses. They didn't come from the laws of God. They're excerpts, and they've made their own laws, and to the tune of 615 laws, but they have thousands of things that they practice and that they use against people who are the Jews in the church in Jerusalem. So let's talk about Matthew 23, and let's see if we can make a comparison with why is this important in my life. The first thing I want to do, though, is I want to talk about, because Jesus is going to talk about the law and why the purpose of his coming to earth was to fulfill the law. Now, how do I know that? Because in Matthew 5:17 through 20, and we studied this when we studied Matthew 5, it says, do not suppose or assume that I came to destroy or do away with or abolish the law. I'm reading to you terms that come from the different interpretations of or translations of the Bible, but in fact they're all right on. It says, do not suppose or assume that I came to destroy or do away with or abolish the law or the prophets. So he's saying, I'm not doing away with the law. I did come to do away or abolish. I did not come to destroy, to do away with or abolish, but to fulfill it. That's what verse 17 says. And then in verse 18 it says, I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, one iota or one jot will never pass from the law until all things have taken place. And 19 says, therefore, whoever breaks or loosens or relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches men that in the same shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So what he's saying is the false teachers, the false prophets, those are going to be the ones that are going to be condemned. Those are the ones that are going to be the least. If they even change one thing in the law, then they shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. For verse 20, for I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, did you get that? So this is part of the preview, that what Matthew 5:17 through 20 says, and that it's to get us ready to accept what he's getting ready to put down on the Pharisees. So here we go. This is in Matthew 23, and I'm going to start with verse 1, and it says, then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, so he's talking to everybody here. He says, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees are the official interpreters of the law of Moses. Okay, so they've been given this privilege of interpreting the law to the people. Now, so he says, practice and obey whatever they tell you, but don't follow their example. Do what they say, not what they do, for they don't practice what they teach. This is a huge criticism to the Pharisees, that they're teaching you one thing, but they're doing something else. And you know, I can tell you every day that as a Sunday school teacher, that I really have to watch myself, because I'm human too. And that is, I need to practice what I teach every day. And that's what Jesus is saying the Pharisees are not doing. He says in verse 4, they crush people with unbearable religious demands, and they never lift a finger to ease the burden. Now, in verses 1 through 4, we see the characteristics of the Pharisees start to show up. And now he's going to really get into it in a minute. But we see how the Pharisees have been used in the continuity of the faith, in the things that have been given to Moses. You know, God gave the law to Moses. That was number one. Number two, Moses handed it to Joshua. You know, now who was Joshua? Well, after Moses died, Joshua took over. Was Joshua Moses' brother? No, Aaron was Moses' brother. But Joshua was one of the inner circle. He was one of the spies that went into the land of Jordan, if you remember. And so Joshua became the leader of the people when they came across after Moses died. Now, so Moses handed the law to Joshua. Joshua transmitted the law to the elders. The elders passed it down to the prophets, and the prophets gave it to the scribes and the Pharisees. That's how it all washed out. And that's how the scribes and the Pharisees became the holders of the law. The studiers of the law, you know that, you know very well that Saul, that became Paul, was very well educated as a religious leader through the Pharisees. He was a Pharisee. Now, when Jesus tells you there that you're to do what they say, he's not commending them. We need to stop just a minute and look at it, because we're saying, oh, well, he's saying, we'll do what they say. He's saying, do what the law says. He's not saying, do anything outside of the law that they may tell you, which is the thousands of things that they've added to it. So he's saying, receive the great principles that were given to Moses by God, and then you have to obey them. You must obey them. And then when we studied Matthew 5, 17 through 20, we saw the principles of the Ten Commandments, and we saw them come through as two great principles. Now, we've talked about this in class several times. And you know, when Jesus says, I give you the new law, and it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, with all your soul, with all your strength. Okay, that's one. I got a mosquito in my face. And then the second one is, and love your neighbor as yourself. So he's saying love, love, love. That is the new law. Now, what are those things? If we interpret those things, if we look at them from a different point of view, the Ten Commandments, let's look at the Ten Commandments from the way Jesus is teaching it. First of all, he's saying, number one, reverence. This is a great principle for the way we're supposed to live our lives. We're supposed to live our lives in reverence. Reverence to God, reverence in God's name, for God's day of the week, and for the parents that God has given us. Now, I want you to think about this a minute. When I talk about reverence, and I'm talking about reverence to God, I'm talking about commandment number one, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. And then number two is love thy neighbor as thyself. Those are the great principles of reverence. Okay, and then for God's name, if you recall, the commandment number 3 is thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. So then for the Lord's day, and then number 4, it says remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And then number 5, the commandment number 5 is to honor your father and mother, and this is reverence for your parents. And that's the one commandment that it's got another, it gives you a promise on the end of that. And you honor your father and mother, and long will be your days upon the earth. And so that's the reverence that Jesus has taught. That's one of the two great principles that's taught. So when people say to you, we have to follow the 10 Commandments, yes, but Jesus gave us a different way to look at the 10 Commandments. Rather than beating us over the head with them, he's saying love. Love is the important thing. And this is the second part of it. Other than the great principle of reverence, we have the great principle of respect. Respect for someone's life, for an individual's life. That's commandment number 6. Thou shalt not murder. And then for their possessions and their personality. And, their name, their good name. Because commandment number 7 is that you will not commit adultery. Commandment number 8 is that you do not steal. Commandment number 9 is that you do not lie. Commandment number 10 is you will not covet. Those are the things that are out of respect that you do for someone because you love them. You don't kill somebody if you love them with all your heart. You don't steal their stuff if you love them. You don't commit adultery with their wife if you love that person very much. You look out for their good name. You do not bear false witness against them. And that's, you won't lie. And then you don't covet other people's stuff, because if you covet other people's stuff, then you want to take their stuff. You want to murder them and get their stuff. You see how that all works together? It's amazing how it all works together when you look at it from the standpoint of the way Jesus teaches it. Okay, these principles that the Pharisees and the scribes are teaching, those principles, the principles of the 10 Commandments, they're eternal, guys. When the scribes and the Pharisees teach reverence for God and respect for others, their teaching is eternally binding. It's eternally valid. That's what Jesus is saying. That when you look at what they teach, don't look at what they do. Okay, now the scribes and the Pharisees saw religion. Let's just look at them just for a minute as rules and regs. The effect of their thousands and thousands of rules and regulation made religion an intolerable burden. Now, I want you to think about what Jesus said, though. What did Jesus tell us? He said that his yoke was easy and his burden was light. He's not saying, I want you to follow all these thousands of rules. Jesus is looking at loving as the basis for everything that he's asking you to do. William Barclay says, you may want to test your religious faith this way. And let's end with this. Test your religious faith this way. 1, does it create wings to lift people up, or is it a dead weight that drags you down? Does it bring joy to your life, or does it bring depression in your life because you're saying, I'll never be enough. I can't be perfect. I can't do what I'm supposed to do, so I'm going to give up and I'm not even going to try anymore, because what's the point? I can't reach that lofty area that I'm supposed to get to in my life, in my heart. Are people, this is number 3, are people helped by your religion, or are they haunted by your religion? In other words, do you try to pound it and shove it down their throats till they're sick of it and they want to run from it? Or do you help them by it? Are you a servant to other people because of your religion? Does it carry us, or does it carry them, or do they carry it? And when a religion becomes a depressing affair of burdens and prohibitions, it ceases to be true religion. The Pharisees would not allow the slightest relaxation of the law. Their whole self-confessed purpose was to build a fence around the law. They did not relax or remove one single regulation. Jesus says, come to me, all of you who are weary, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. For it is light and my burden is easy. That's what Jesus says. Come to Jesus. Come to class today. We're going to find out some more wonderful things that Jesus said. I love you guys, and I hope I see you this morning.